All right, welcome to the men's group on Thursday. Um, I'm here with Stacy, who is going to introduce himself in a second. I'm Jami Keller. JamiAndMarla.Love is our website, and I run a couple of men's groups. And one of the groups, Stacy's a member of, and our conversation last week was just so good that we thought it would be fun to record it, put it on a blog. Let us know what you think. What we discovered, along the way was that men typically, have a sequence of feelings that they feel that lead to bad decision making. And so the sequence is something like frustration, anger, inadequacy. And then inadequacy then goes over to loneliness, kind of, sorta, eventually. And loneliness and isolation is where we make a lot of our bad decisions. And so identifying that sequence was really powerful over the last couple of years, with feeling tracking and seeing how clients of ours, performed and recovered their relationships. And so then Stacy chimes in and he has the most interesting perspective. So first, Stacy, introduce yourself. Who are you? And what are we talking about?
Well, I'm Stacy Haven. I would say that I have been a follower of human nature for as long as I can remember. I grew up. I'll just say I was an awkward kid. I don't know if it was a social disorder or whatever. I can just tell you that I was awkward. And at some point, probably between 12 and 14, it really culminated into a very big issue for me, to the point where I actually was internalizing and saying, okay, I need to figure this out. I need to fix it. And so I started to sort of process human interaction as though it were, for lack of a better word, a program or an algorithm. And I spent a significant amount of time saying, okay, in this situation, this would be an appropriate response, or in that situation, this would be an appropriate response. And obviously, I mean, when you start out very simply, and there's one, maybe two responses. And then over time, you start to accumulate and understand the situations a little bit more innately, and have an understanding for them that gives you a better perspective on how to approach them, where it's no longer an exact response, but a sort of a representational response, so that it could potentially give you a lot more flexibility in the moment of how to navigate situations that ultimately you may not be prepared for. So like if you get pulled into something that you haven't done or dealt with before, because you have this catalog of all of these appropriate ways to navigate them, you become more, I don't know, capable of handling situations that you aren't necessarily, well, that aren't in your algorithm. I mean, that's a better way to put it. And so anyway, long story short, I spent, well, the past 40 years ish, trying to create an understanding of how to interact with humans, and I find people fascinating, and I have just spent a significant amount of time trying to understand myself and what it is that makes me operate, and then how to interact with other people in order to, I don't know, figure out how they operate as well.
All right. Hang on a second. Let's see here. Let's pause this.
Cool.
All right. So Josh is joining the group. And so, Josh, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Josh. I'm from Cincinnati. I'm 38 years old. I guess my mind's still at 33.
3 or 8, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Yeah.
You're old. Just admit it. You're old.
Yeah, you're getting there.
I'm old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting to
38.
feel it.
Just at the crest of the hill right there. No, 38 is great. And so, yeah. And so Stacy was talking about, being an awkward kid and needing, and what you were really kind of describing, Stacy, is how you reverse engineered how to deal with people and feelings, right?
Pretty much.
And
So,
so how old were you when you kind of figured out that this was working?
well, so it was interesting because I actually had a friend who was very into girls. And so he had like a girlfriend, and I won't say a new girlfriend every week, but I'll just say he had a lot. And because of that, and one of the things that I've learned over my spending time watching and understanding interactions is that romantic or romantically involved interactions are probably the most complicated. You can interact with a neighbor, you can interact with somebody randomly on the street. All of those things, there's certain things that that are going to come into play from your person that are ultimately will come out as you're interacting with them. But a romantic interaction has a lot more that is being read into it, that is being, people are evaluating how you say things and what you do and how you would reference things. And so there's a lot more at stake when you're in a romantic interaction. And so because I had this best friend who had all these girlfriends, I would literally spend time becoming their best friend, this girl's best friend. So I was his best friend, and he and I spent a lot of time, but they would call me to understand what was going on in the relationship, which was interesting because I really didn't necessarily, at first I had no clue, but over time I was able to, create my own formulation and understanding based on how she would represent things of an interaction that she had with him and how he would represent things on an interaction with her. And by doing that, it allowed me to be able to create a more holistic algorithm that was very capable of handling those really high intensity interactions with in a romantic way. Because there's, like I said, there's just so much more data and so much more information that is ultimately being read by the other person that has an effect on how they're feeling about it, or what they're going to, what's going to happen next, or any of those kinds of things.
Sure. And so I'm guessing that was teenage years.
Yes. So probably 14 to 18. When I realized it was actually working was when I was about 16. And at that point, I was able to interact with someone in a way that, I'll just tell you this. In the ninth grade, so I'm 14 years old, I became somebody's boyfriend for 1 week. We never went out. I never kissed her, but I was her boyfriend. So clearly my concept of what a relationship was at the time was completely misinformed, misunderstood. I knew, it was, for me, it was the mechanical aspects of it, of I know a girl and she's nice and I like her and she likes me. And you know what? We should be boyfriend and girlfriend. So the mechanical iterative steps of the relationship were playing out. And I said, oh, I should be her boyfriend. And that was the next step. And in my mind, I was just playing it out like you would. But I didn't really actually have a plan or understand what that meant, or even in the context of my peers, understand what that meant. It was all, for me, it was very ethereal, very disconnected. I had no concept of what that really should look like, even based on me seeing it on TV or seeing other people interact. I didn't internalize that. It was still very, it wasn't anything I would do would have been rote. It would have been something I was sort of executing from some dialogue or executionary steps process to determine what I should be doing next. And that was just it. And so that was the point I was like, yeah, this isn't right. And so then when I was about 16, I started to really begin to become very intensely focused on generating this romantic aspect, because my algorithm up to that point had always been just common interactions. I hadn't really dealt with any of the romantic aspects of it. And it wasn't until 14-ish, then that was really coming into play. And then that between 14 and 16, I focused a heavy amount of time on watching him and his girlfriends in order to know how people should appropriately react and interact.
And what a lucky break.
It was.
You had a friend that was, doing pretty well with the ladies, and then you get to be best friends and actually hear their thoughts and hear their questions, and like, okay, this is what people are going after. This is what they're, there's a certain set of responses that work, and so you basically have at this point, you're 19, and you have reverse engineered social and romantic.
16, but just to.
Okay, to be fair, okay.
Here's the reality. I'm still learning romantic interactions. I'm not saying I, at that point, had the black book of how to interact with women. I just had a fundamental understanding of what the concepts were. I still had to then turn that into something usable.
Right. And so great. Okay, so here you are, you're 16, you reverse engineered. You didn't, so what I'm hearing is that you didn't feel like you were normal, and you didn't feel like,
I wasn't. I mean, okay, how many 14-year-olds do you know who become somebody's boyfriend and literally don't interact with them for a week?
well, I think I had a couple of those.
Me,
Josh?
Yeah.
Well,
me, that was me.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah, so
me.
Josh, how is that different? How much different?
Every one of my relationships throughout school, from, for, let's say, kindergarten to high school, even through college, I I'd have girlfriends, but we didn't, we wouldn't maybe hold hands,
so
sit together and eat lunch, maybe.
let me reiterate what I said. I never said that you aren't unnormal like I was unnormal. I just said that I wasn't normal. Welcome to the club, Josh.
You're normal.
Well, and that's a
You're
good,
normal.
it's a good point. I mean, you didn't feel normal. I don't think I felt normal as a kid, as a teenager. I
But
tried to be normal.
And here's the thing between me and what I would say is a typical 14-year-old. I knew and recognized it and saw an opportunity for me to create an understanding that I was lacking.
Right.
Most 14-year-olds, not necessarily very self-aware. And I won't say that I was quote unquote self-aware. I certainly did not have a full picture of who I needed to be as a person or what I needed from people.
Right. But you at least saw the deficit. You saw that.
Correct.
And so
absolutely.
I wish I could have seen that as a kid. I was completely socially awkward and just a wreck, a train wreck when it came to social stuff. Right. I mean, I got blacklisted in first grade. Okay. I was blacklisted in first grade.
It happens.
It was rough. I was hated. And I don't know why. I have some guesses, but
I'm sure in first grade I was not far from you, if not worse. I mean,
right.
maybe not blacklisted, but
well, I got easily triggered, and so I got into a fight with one of the kids and used my ruler on his head, which was, it was one of those things, right? I just did not have the skills. He was stealing my scissors. He was part of a gang that was trying to gang up on me, and I was like, I'm not taking this. And he took my scissors and I just tackled him in the middle of the classroom and took my, in first grade, you had those rulers with the little sharp edge on it. It was wood with a piece of metal.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah. The saddest part about that was when the principal is on the phone with my dad and he says, do you want me to take care of this with the green monster that was on the wall, the big paddle thing?
Oh.
Yeah. And I was like, I'll do that. That sounds like a good option. And my dad says, no. I could hear his voice over the phone. No, I'll take care of it at
Time
home.
for the belt. Time for the belt.
I had to wait all day, and it was late at night before I got my whipping, and that was too bad. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, okay. So I think that what was unique about you was that you really recognized the need to develop a system, a way to know what would be at least a safe response, so you could talk to people, and you were having some success. How old were you when you had a girlfriend? 16?
Well, so 14, that was the first girlfriend, and then I didn't have another one until I was probably 16, almost 17.
Same result, kind of like we're girlfriend, boyfriend.
No. At that point, I actually understood, and I was able to be, I don't know what a typical boyfriend would be. There were definite interactions that were complicated, and I certainly didn't necessarily do well with it, but I think that I would say I was average at that point in my ability to interact romantically.
Right. And so, okay. And so you have this, when did you develop your rule? And what is your rule?
My rule, which rule?
The main rule was like, you say something like,
honestly, it probably has sort of started when I was probably in my late teens, early 20s, was before I really became understanding. And the rule that Jamie's talking about is what is my desired outcome? That is a question I ask myself in almost everything that I do, simply to keep myself from overstepping or heading in a direction that ultimately isn't going to get me what I want. I mean, that's at the end of the day, everyone's goal is to get what they want. Now, it could be that they want happiness for someone else. That could be the goal. It doesn't always have to be a selfish perspective, but the goal, if you're not achieving or not able to achieve your goal, and you're basically killing your own engagement to get to that end result, then that's the problem. And that's the point why you ask that question is, well, what is my desired outcome? Because if you know your outcome, then it sort of facilitates your actions, your interactions, the words you use, how you word them, the tonality, your body language, all of those things sort of amalgamated into interaction, which again feeds back to my algorithm of creating a fundamental understanding of, in this situation, what do I need to do to achieve my desired outcome?
Yeah. And so, when we're talking with people, doing marriage counseling or coaching somebody, we often say, there's a 3-step process, right? First, you listen. And then you have to form some kind of empathy in that situation. And the rule that we work on is the kind of the abundance, what we call the abundance rule, is, there's no limit to what someone will do for you if you can explain their pain as well or better than them. And that's the 3-step process. So you listen, you develop your empathy, and then you speak the empathy first, right? And then everything else can come after that, right? If you can get to that place of empathy, even if it's just a marginal attempt to be connected, and maybe you're not doing a great job out of it, at least there's something to build on from there, and if you're not doing those things in a conversation, then you're probably just talking, right? You're not probably getting to what is your desired outcome. So how does your system differ from that?
Well, I think first and foremost, and the word that you use that I think is will sort of draw a better picture of the reason why my algorithm even exists, is empathy.
Right.
Because empathy isn't something that I'll just say it's not innate. It's not something that I have inside me that is just natural to come out. It is something I have worked at as a system, which I know sounds somewhat mechanical, but in the end, if somebody perceives empathy, regardless of whether or not it's what you're providing, is irrelevant. And I had to learn how to be perceived as empathetic, regardless of what I was actually feeling on the inside. Because I would say that, and the way I would describe it is that for a lot of people that I talk to about this, my algorithm, is that a lot of people recognize emotion as a process of I'm feeling a certain way, and then I can think about it or concentrate on it and then understand why I'm feeling that way. And for me, it's typically the opposite. I think about something and then I recognize the emotion that potentially would have gone along with those items, well, whatever it is that's happening, most people would have. And so because of that, I have to be very conscientious about how I'm being perceived in the moment. Everyone does it, but for most people, it's a secondary process. So you're not consciously thinking about how you're being empathetic. But I have to I used to have to concentrate on what I needed to do to be perceived as being empathetic.
Okay.
And I've gotten to the point now where it is far more, natural. I don't necessarily have to think about it as much. But when I was young, because I just didn't understand social interaction, it was a much harder sell for me to be able to, figure out how to navigate those situations.
That's interesting. Josh, when did you realize empathy was important?
Well, I think I'm still kind of trying to realize that it is.
Right. And that's what's important.
And I think, well, when I can't speak to when I realized it was important, but lately it seems I'm being reminded that when I think I'm I guess my facial expressions don't meet the empathy that I need to project to other people that I'm feeling. Does that make sense?
Hey,
Sure.
That was weird.
I got an algorithm to sell you.
Yeah. See, this is
Yeah,
the
that's
point.
what we're talking about
This
now.
is my
That's
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
what I'm saying. That's exactly
I
what I'm
know.
saying.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So I'm still kind of. I thought I knew that, but apparently, according to my wife and my child, I don't.
right. And
I
this is
don't
my
know.
point, is the reason why I ask you that is because, okay, when did I realize empathy was important? Well, damn, I'm not sure I want to admit that, right? I'm not sure.
I thought I did.
I was pretty self-centered. Survival was kind of high on my list. And, and what I realized was, boy, people love it when I take charge, being tall, you know, yeah, I got, my big breakthrough is really my sophomore year. I got to be captain of the defense, and and all that, and I kind of accelerated. And I thought, okay, here's how you do it: you cuss real loud, and you stick your chest out, and you hit people really hard on the back, and use those 4-letter words, and somehow they just follow along. So my guess is, my guess is, Stacy, is that you really aren't that different than most men. I think a lot
No,
of men.
no, I'm sure I'm not.
Right. Yeah.
You had the analytical wherewithal to do something about it.
And for me, that is so a connected person. So the most interesting thing, and when you were talking about, I can't remember exactly what you were saying, but one of the things that I realized is that my need is connection. My core need is connection. And I realized you can't get a lot of connection by being an asshole. I mean, it's just not, the two don't go hand in hand. And when I say being an asshole, I don't mean like intentionally being rude or obnoxious, but if you don't have empathy, or you don't have the ability to be perceived as empathetic, or you can't meet someone at their level, you're an asshole. I mean, maybe in the moment, and it may be a lifetime. I mean, definitely people have those things, but the reality is I realize if connection is my needed outcome, well, clearly I can't just ignore the idea that empathy is required. And so that was sort of fell into it. And I didn't learn that until far later in life. I mean, I definitely didn't know that at 16. I don't think that I knew that in my early 20s. But because I will say in my early 20s, when I was thinking, what is my desired outcome? It was always about executionary evidence. So I did this, and look at what the outcome was. Or I made money, or I bought a car. I mean, it was always just something I was doing for an end result. That was it. And so there was never anything about, I mean, again, I wasn't self-aware enough to realize I needed connection or I was dying inside. And it took me a lot of years before I really understood that that was the culmination of all of this thing that I had created to be able to get what I needed. I was just without, and I would just go, man, I'm not happy. Something's not right. And I was really an upbeat person, but I just couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was that was just escaping me, just
Right.
out of reach of me feeling like I actually had figured out the magic, uh, formula to life.
Yeah. And so, okay, so I think I need to back up a little bit here. So I'm going to put up the feeling wheel. And as you can see, the feeling wheel is a lot of feelings on it. And I want to back up even more, because emotion is the chemicals that your body makes in reaction to the environment that you're in. That's emotion. So those are chemicals: adrenaline, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, the list goes on. Norepinephrine is a really important one. And so cortisol for women particularly. And so those just based on being human, we just alive, we're getting a dose of these emotions. Well, then the feelings on this feeling wheel, they are
Their way to catalog and
yeah,
interpret.
they're the
Yeah.
names we put on the emotions so that we can communicate. And the reason why the feeling wheel 5.0 is so important, and it's available on Etsy, by the way, to nominated copies or digital copy, is so that we can have a common language. right? And one of the big reasons why we're so successful with keeping couples together is we get people to say the same thing that means the same thing to each other, right? And then we have practice with that. And so what you're talking about, Stacy, is how a kind of an alternate system that you developed to build into this, appropriate facial reactions, eye contact. I mean, you're talking about all the nitty gritties, right? It's kind of like
What expression do I use
it's
here?
actually really funny. Just to really quickly take a quick sidetrack. One of the things I notice about myself is when I'm talking to somebody, I look like right here.
right. And
I don't look people in their eyes ever.
Mm.
Like rarely. Like I have to consciously look them in the eye.
I was taught to always, look, the same way. You don't need to look them in the eye. You can appear to look them in the eye if you look at something,
Well,
just
I had
past
I
or
was
beyond in the direction of their face.
yeah.
You know,
it wasn't
in
something that
area.
anyone said to me, because everyone I was taught me look someone in the eye. But it's just interesting is that I tend to just do that naturally, just because it's sort of a, I don't know, and I always wondered if that was an autistic trait or whatever, but just
Well,
curious.
it's interesting because I think that, well, heck, especially since, post pandemic kind of stuff, the people are a lot less friendly. There's a lot less eye contact. There's a lot less connection, neighborly kind of connection. And then there's more too. So some people are like dying for it, and they're like sponges on the sidewalk waiting for you to walk by so they can talk to you. And then other people, like the other day, I was at the gas station and I noticed that the person in the other pump, I mean, neither one of us were making eye contact. We weren't looking at each other. We weren't, we were just getting our gas in our car, which is, in this area is, it hasn't been as common in years past. We live in the Boise area, and it's just very friendly area, right? That wouldn't have happened 10 years ago or 15 years ago here. I mean, when we first moved here, we couldn't hardly walk down the greenbelt without people stopping us and wanting to have a full conversation, like in the middle of the greenbelt. And we were like, man, this is a weird place. Everybody's so friendly, right? And we were like, okay, that's cool. We can be friendly. And, we got to know people on our walk. Literally, we know their names on the routine walk, right? And that kind of thing. But that doesn't happen today, not here anymore. It's a lot busier. People are a lot more people from out of town moved here. But I think that this is an important topic, because what is the appropriate amount of eye contact? How do we connect? And what were you looking for? You said you looked in the middle of their face, kind of like the nose.
I needed to be perceived as connecting.
So
I needed them to feel like I was connecting with them. Again, that feeds into the algorithm. It was like, what do they need to feel like I am being intentional in this conversation? I am being representative of what it is that they need from me to feel like I'm aware, engaged, focused, all of those pieces, which may or may not. I mean, I definitely have ADD or ADHD. I mean, my mind wanders. I mean, I remember having a conversation with a friend, this is years ago, and she was telling a story about something, and there was like a 2-second pause, maybe a 3-second pause. And then I said something, and she said, whoa, 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 whoa. I need you to walk me through the steps. How did we get to what you just said? And I was able to go, okay, well, we were talking about this, and then that led to me, this. And there was probably 9 different iterations of ideas to be able to create what I ultimately told her. So when I'm standing, I mean, literally someone will tell me their name, and 2 seconds later, I have no idea what their actual name is. But I need them
for me too.
I'm just saying I need them to feel, and I typically, when I'm really, really focused on it, then I'll make it a priority. But I'm just saying that it's for them. I mean, it's for them to feel like I'm connecting with them.
Yeah, if you can,
because I need that.
So what do you? So you're just looking to show eye contact. You're not even really even looking at the person.
Well, I mean, clearly I'm.
For me,
I would say sure. Again, remember how I was saying, and this is the thing that people really sort of misconstrue, or at least misconstrue or don't quite understand. I don't necessarily feel emotion in the same way most people do. So it's not always about what I'm feeling, and when you were talking about the feeling wheel, and I was saying how I think about an emotion and then I feel an emotion, the reality is that it's very mechanical inside my head.
Yeah, well, sure. and that's kind of where we start with a lot of, we have a lot of tech types in this area, and a lot of the guys really appreciate the feeling wheel 5.0 because they can look at it, it makes sense. Here's just where the feelings are.
Right.
This is what I need to say. I'll pick one of these, even if I think a lot of people start with where you started. I'm just going to pick one and say, that's what I'm feeling today, because that seems socially appropriate. Right. and I'm sharing something about myself, but it's like, what's really interesting to me is that we don't pick up on micro expressions typically. If you ever want to watch a really great little tutorial, go watch Lie to Me. The first 3 episodes. It used to be
a great show.
It's a really great show. It's about Dr. Eisman, who was in the South Pacific, and he realized that taking pictures of people that had never seen anybody from outside their village, right? That we all have these common expressions that we would use, with some subtle differences, depending on what tribe you're from or whatever. But Dr. Eisman's work was groundbreaking, and the first 3 episodes are like a really great tutorial about what to look for. Look for people lying. Look for shame. If I'm walking towards you and I do this, you should probably duck, because I'm probably going to hit you.
Yeah.
That's a rageful, a disgusted look, right? And so those little lip curls and things like that are very subtle, and they're differences. This is called a manipulator. If you touch your face, it's a manipulator. If you do this, you're trying not to say something. Posture stuff, interaction stuff. There's lots of little details that we've learned in order to read people, pick up on things. And when I watch somebody talk and I see one of these things and I point it out, they often are like, well, yeah, I kind of was feeling that way, but I really wasn't aware of it. Things are moving so fast in our culture, in our dialogues, that people don't know how to do what you said earlier, Stacy, and that is ask for what they want in a way that the other person or people can hear it and understand it and actually want to give it to you. We call that speaking your truth in love, right? So if I can speak my truth in love and I can do it powerfully enough and empathetically enough, right, then people will want to give me what I want. It's not easy, but it can be improved, right? Josh, you started to say something a minute ago, and I think you got cut off about.
I did.
About the eye contact thing. You started to say how you kind of look, what do you do for eye contact?
Oh yeah, I guess. No, I was just affirming everything, that Stacy was saying was essentially me. It's like in a lot of with, expressing and having conversations with people and listening to them, it's like I often find myself having to ask, what do they want from me with this information? Like, why are you giving, like a lot of the times, they want empathy from you, but you don't necessarily feel the need
to offer it,
to give
it, which makes the situation then awkward. And so then I kind of just growed up. And it was great finally getting connected with you, Jami, is I'm finally realizing the power behind, all right, what do you need from me in telling me this? Do you need a hug? Do you need advice? Do you need, and now that I have those.
To be empathetic, you want me to just be present?
Right. What do you need from me in giving me this information? And that's incredibly powerful. I'm finding in helping easing the awkwardness in relationships I want to keep at arm's length or professional, or because I always found like growing up thinking I have to have an intense relationship with everybody I come across, and like you got to be always 100% connected. That's not the case. And I always found that hard and awkward to manipulate. Or
manipulate may not be the right word, but just to perform, right? Perform. And like what you just said earlier, that's a tough one, right? How do you get your wife and kid to feel like you're being connected when they say your facial expressions aren't matching what they would like to see, and it feels a little like, well, screw that. I don't want, I don't want, I don't, I don't need to be pretending to feel something so I can be connected. But there is something about, learning about what people are, that kind of feedback is invaluable, really. It's a very loving gift to say, I don't think you understand, I don't think you're listening, or I don't think you're getting it, right? And that's a powerful thing. Okay, so I think two things for next week. We got to dig into this, right? We got to dig into this. I think the important things to remember are that no matter where you are in this communication game, right, with people around you, whether it be at work or at home, with your partner, we all could do better. I think we could all do better in connecting. The things that you said that I think were really fascinating, Stacy, are one, that you developed this really cool system, and we're going to learn more about that next week. Number one, what do I want?
What is my desired outcome?
What is my desired outcome? I love that. I can't remember to say it right, but what is my desired outcome? I think
because it isn't always about getting something. That's the thing is it because most people say, what do I want? But what is my desired outcome is a little bit more explicit in the fact that it's not relative to you per se, other than that's the end result. Sorry, go on.
No, perfect. No, I love that. And I think that's a really great place to start next week. And then okay. And then the next thing is, what is the system that I want to use? Right. And so learning more about your system, Stacy, I think is what's going to be important next week. I think it'll be vital to have that kind of, basic beginning point for anybody looking to manage their emotions, express them healthfully, and be connected in the process, so that you're not, excluding people or putting people off in your world. I mean, obviously, okay, for those that don't know, Stacy is an extremely successful person. In my book, he's one of the smartest people I know, and he is extremely successful in his work, which we'll talk about more about that next week if you'd like. And Josh, thanks for your input today. I think that was really helpful, because I could sit here and say, well, I was pretty awkward as a kid. I didn't know any of these things either. So that helped me kind of, I think, Stacy, did it help to find out that you weren't alone in this?
Oh, I knew that I wasn't necessarily alone, as much as the fact that I didn't want to be that way. And I recognized that that as time went on, that because of what I wanted from people, I knew that I knew that I couldn't just do whatever I wanted to do and have that be okay.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Well, I for one can't wait for next week to find out the nuts and bolts. And
it's a lifelong process. You won't learn it. It's not like I'm going to be able to write it on the back of a napkin.
This equation, because
well,
I need it so badly.
Well, I think I think anybody that said that there's a 3-step process, I mean, we start with that 3 steps. I mean, I'm not saying that's a complete thing, right? But that's a beginning place.
Exactly.
Right. And so this will be another, we'll get to the place where you can develop your own system. I think that's important. Anybody that says they have a simple 3-step process that will get you relationships perfect.
Or lose weight, because I think I get those every week.
Get your career advancement.
I've received more texts about how I can lose weight in 2 weeks than anything I've ever got.
I get a lot of sales and convert clients kind of thing, and I'm like, oh god, there's so much.
I get a lot of the prostate help and extends and all that jazz. I get a lot of that.
I think that somebody's trying to tell you something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's coming. Josh, you're a little young, but it's coming. You're gonna find out more about that.
Oh, I know. I'm well aware.
Well, great session, guys. We'll see you next week. We'll post this on YouTube. Same bat channel, same bat time next week.
Thanks.
Thank you.